I have red oil all over my face during the board meeting.
We'll let you know.
I'm like, sorry, guys.
I move to approve with the recommended change to the minutes as presented.
And just for clarification, that's the February 25th minutes. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Miranda Sweet seconds. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We don't have any consent agenda today. No items in the consent agenda. What I would like to do is change the order slightly so that we do the wildlife corridors next. So that's item E. We're going to move up and do right now. And Jeff Gagnon, I believe you're going to make a brief presentation. So please go ahead.
Presentation up, so hopefully it'll be pretty good for you. The presentation I'm going to share with you is one that part of one that I've shared recently. In fact, I shared it with our commission about 2 weeks ago, and our commission directed us, myself included, to write a resolution on wildlife connectivity and wildlife crossings for dealing with some of the issues that we're going to talk about here. And so I broke down pieces of that meeting to the commission that are more relevant to the area that we're talking about up in Flagstaff. So I want to make sure that you can see my presentation before I start talking through it. Can you see?
We can see it, yes.
Okay.
It says I-17 and I-40, etc.
I-17, I-40 project update. So I'll go ahead and get started with that. See if I can get it to change now. Okay. So I'll keep it brief. My objectives are just to talk a little bit about, kind of why, why we have wildlife crossings and some of the things that we're doing to address habitat fragmentation, wildlife vehicle collisions, as some of the wildlife crossing projects in Arizona, and then an update on I-17 and I-40 is more of the focus of this, as much as anything. So this is an old map, but someone like David probably remembers these maps from many years ago. And when you looked at this and said, wow, the state's growing, and then the recession hit and everybody said, no, that's not going to be that big. And now we're looking at this map again many years later going, wow, I mean, this is not out of the realm of possibility, the level of growth we're having, and you're seeing it in a lot of places. And roads are one of the big reasons, or one of the big causes of habitat fragmentation for wildlife, and addressing the population growth with roads is one way. Also development, but I'm focusing on roads because that's really a lot of what I do. You can see Arizona's major gateway to the United States, through the United States, and that doesn't include some of the roads like the proposed I-11 corridor in Arizona there. And so you can see how Arizona gets fragmented with roads, and what that does is it keeps animals from being able to get do their daily and seasonal migrations, including getting sometimes water cover, summer range, winter range. It's called habitat fragmentation. They just can't move across the landscape like they're supposed to, so they get kind of bound up in these areas where they can't survive as easily. And then also there's the roadkill side of things. This is 10 elk that were hit on I-40 last year. And this is just one of the safety concerns that we have. And it's a big deal. It's something that we need to address with the roads, especially some of the interstates, because if you hit an elk, the devastation that it causes is pretty intense. And so you've got the issues of the collisions. United States, 365 million animals are killed on roads each year. That's including the small ones too. You see, and also we have the habitat fragmentation. So what do we do about it? So my team deals with connectivity. We've helped a lot of states and countries over the past years kind of develop their programs because we've been learning about wildlife crossings and connectivity and corridors going back in the early 2000s, late 1990s, early 2000s, and we've been able to help guide some of this stuff going forward in Arizona and other places. This is an example of where we do work, and David talked about some of the elk captures. You can see we put collars on animals, help tell us where to put wildlife crossings, and some of that good stuff to be able to learn, use data-driven recommendations. So how we deal with that, I'm sorry that the stuff's a little bit off on the center. It's just I was kind of patching it together last minute, is wildlife crossings and fencing. So here's an example of the State Route 77 overpass by Oracle and an underpass on State Route 260. You combine that with exclusionary fencing and you have a way to resolve some of these issues. So State Route 260, we started that evaluation in about 2001, 2002. And there was wildlife crossings going in. We were making recommendations kind of moving forward. This is a funny one I like to share because that's me more than 20 years ago using VCRs to record animals using the structures. So that's how long we've been this. And in wildlife crossing, we saw more than 10,000 animals use the wildlife crossings on State Route 260 east of Payson. And we saw animals, the connectivity there. So it's kind of funny to see, where a lot of that started. And we've started to evolve a little bit into things like detection systems. This was actually put in 2007, but it's been upgraded in 2019, 2020. But here's an example of where if animals are near the road, the detection system detects the animals and alerts motorists. You see this rabbit here, you'll see this thing moving in a second. That's a rabbit. Notice it doesn't have a box around it. You can write the software to actually not come on for things that are in this case smaller than coyotes. We have it written. So the idea is it turns this sign on the left, lets people know there's animals near the road. There is fence guiding animals to this location. That's one of the limitations of this particular animal detection. We can get more into that later if anybody is interested in this more. But Highway 93 is another example where we've used collars to identify where to put wildlife crossings. Here's an example of one of the overpasses. In fact, we have four wildlife overpasses in Arizona for people that don't actually know that. There's a lot of states talking about wildlife overpasses, and we're a decade after our fourth wildlife overpass here. This is one of the sheep overpasses from a bird's eye view, one of the sheep overpasses from a sheep's eye view, and this is before they finished construction and started putting growing and vegetation on those. So we had more than 6,000 sheep cross those structures, and where we had seen hardly any crossings before that. And in fact, we have not had a collision since 2014 with a sheep, and we had close to, I think it was 11 to 12 per year at one point before the upgrade of Highway 93. We've been able to take the information that we have and work with other states, including I live in Boulder City bypass across the river. You've seen that. My team helped with guiding where this structure and the design and helped. We're also monitoring. We've seen 19,000 crossings. It's not just to the overpass, but there's several underpasses like that on the right. You see very large bridges. We've also worked with New Mexico to help with them with some of their information, including their wildlife corridors action plan. One point I wanted to make is how this works in relatively urban settings as well. This is an important one. I wanted a lot of you may or may not be aware of this. But back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, the Regional Transportation Authority received funding from a 50-cent sales tax, which provided $45 million specifically for wildlife crossings. And what we've been able to do is work, the RTA board is able to take those funds and use them strategically. As ADOT's upgrading a road, here's some funds to help upgrade wildlife crossings. And so this has put Pima County really on the map as far as being one of the leaders in wildlife connectivity. And the map on the left is what's planned to be funded or what's been funded through that RTA. And those red circles are just an example of two projects that I'm helping monitor. And one of those, the overpass I showed you, but there's some underpasses there too. On Tangerine Road and State Route 77, we've seen 28,000 crossings by 40 different species of wildlife. So you can see how this works pretty well to be able to work with that. So this is a little bit out of order here. I think I have I-17 first, but I wanted to talk about Northern Arizona crossing priorities. And so one of the things that's important is obviously human safety is a big thing. You saw that accident that I showed you earlier. So ADOT, having something that ADOT's on board with, in our case, we're working with ADOT or whoever the transportation agency is. That's a key component. And then we can bring in the wildlife side. And then obviously, in this case, what I'm talking about now, the land ownership, and it will be Forest Service, but if you don't have each side of the road addressed as far as connectivity goes, it doesn't matter if you have a wildlife crossing. So all three of these combined need to come together to be able to be successful. I-17 is a bad place for accidents. Also, I mean, I showed you I-40, I-17 is the same issue. High speeds. I mean, it's one thing to hit a deer on the road, but when you're dodging elk and hitting elk, it's a pretty serious thing. And this is kind of, I didn't really want to throw this in here just because I didn't want to be a downer, but from what I understand, there was an accident this morning where some folks lost their lives in an elk vehicle collision just north of Munns Park, and you'll probably be hearing about that pretty soon.
Wow.
So along I-17, we documented 100 elk and deer killed every year from 2007 to 2010. So it's a pretty serious safety concern. It's also a habitat fragmentation concern. We see a lot of animals, even though we see 100 elk and deer collisions, we see a lot of animals not cross. It causes them to, this is 70% of the animals we collar did not cross I-17. This is causing their migration to run north and south versus across the road for the most part. So it's a big barrier. I-17 is a huge barrier to wildlife. Working with ADOT back in the mid to late 2000s, we identified some mitigation plans that included wildlife crossings on I-17 from Stoneman Lake to Flagstaff. We're focusing on 2 of those locations. The overall funding for that project through the design concept report was shelved due to lack of funding. So we're working with ADOT now to focus on these 2 overpasses. One's just south of Kachina Village, one's north of Munns Park. What this might look like, the one south of Kachina Village, this is just kind of a rendering I put together. Don't know what the design's going to look like, but that's just an idea of what that could look like for wildlife crossings. And then on Willard Springs, between Willard Springs and Munns Park, there's going to be another one there, kind of between those 2 cut slopes. We also, those of you that drive south on I-17, there's a fencing project there where we've upgraded the right-of-way fence to guide elk to Munns and Woods Canyon Bridge. And that project was successful in reducing elk vehicle collisions. In fact, we saw in the first 3 years, we saw a 97% reduction of elk vehicle collisions in that area, and the structures were getting used. So the problem is that was a cost-effective temporary fix, and animals, it's starting to degrade, and it needs to be upgraded to our regular ungulate-proof fencing, which is a woven wire 8-foot fence. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that, but we're looking to try to upgrade that fence as well. I-40, milepost 174 west of Flagstaff is the highest elk vehicle collision spot that we have on I-40. And also we see on I-40, 100 elk and deer again killed by vehicles each year. And that 100 is not a typo from I-17. It's also 100 that we documented in our research there. And again, it's also a barrier to wildlife. You can see here, 70%, again, not a typo, it just happens to be the same number of elk that we collared did not cross I-17, and their migration has been moved east to west on that road. You can see the migration mapper on the right there. So some of these crossings we're working out with ADOT, we see, you can see the locations of those stars. That's some of the overpasses we're looking at to try to address the connectivity issue, but combine that with fencing will help deal with the safety issue as well. And when you do that, you help a lot of other animals that use those structures at the same time. An example would be pronghorn. This is pronghorn west of Flagstaff. You can see the animals north of I-40. Those are GPS. I probably should have explained this earlier, but the dots are GPS locations. All these maps I show you are GPS collared animals that can't get across the road. I-40 is a complete fragmentation of pronghorn. We haven't documented a crossing of pronghorn. One of my coworkers, Lee Ludiker, he's on his 50th year in the department, and he doesn't know when the last pronghorn crossed this area. So it's pretty severe, and we actually see some genetic issues with these animals across roads. They're so fragmented in these cases. So adding an overpass there could help connect animals from Grand Canyon to Prescott, which, without getting into too much detail, is part of our Secretarial Order 3362, which is a Western Migrations initiative that we're working on as well. We see Pronghorn crossing the tracks on I-40, the area where we're going to put the wildlife crossing. Those are also GPS locations. The blue lines are their movements. They're ready to go. If we put in an overpass on I-40, the roads are unbundled here. The roads unbundled with the tracks and Route 66. We're able to actually succeed with this to get pronghorn and elk and other wildlife across the road, and the fencing will deal with the accidents. In fact, this is so far along that we've actually got design plans for the 3 overpasses I showed you. We've started to work on the design plans with ADOT, including here's a footprint that we've ran past the Forest Service so that they could preliminarily approve the archaeology side of things. So that's how far this stuff is tracking, if you will, is we're going moving the needle forward as much as we can. I-40 is a split median in this area. You can see what it would look like with an overpass on either side there, and that's to me, that's a slam dunk. I mean, I was surprised at how well the topography and the wildlife movements lined up with this spot. So it's really a good possibility. So the status on these projects, I-17 and I-40, the Game and Fish provided funding through an agreement with ADOT to begin the design process in July 2022. We are still going through that 30% design. Game and Fish right now has identified some funds to complete the design from 30 to 100% design. We hope to have those hopefully July 1. Game and Fish is also pursuing, with the help of ADOT, some funds through the National Fish and Wildlife Federation or Foundation to also address the fencing at Munns Park to Woods Canyon, that extended right-of-way fencing I was talking about, to make it more impermeable to wildlife. One of our biggest hurdles that we see is funding for these projects. We know how to fix the problem. It's hard to pay for it. And so funding a non-federal match is a key thing here. So some of you may probably heard this if you're all in tune with wildlife crossings. Yesterday, this wildlife crossing pilot program came out. It's $350 million for wildlife crossings. But it's a 5-year program. 111 million comes out with this notice of funding opportunity. We're working with ADOT to try to fund the I-17 and I-40 projects, but it will be a challenge to come up with the non-federal match for that. And we're still working on some of those details, but I do, like I said, this morning, we saw an accident where people died because of wildlife collision. So it's something that needs to happen soon. So that's kind of my update of I-17 and I-40. And I wanted to go ahead and answer any questions if anybody had any.
I'd love to chime in.
Yeah, Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I could talk at length about a lot of this stuff in very excited terms. My first question is, can you just remind me why this was agendized? I know that I brought this topic up just a couple months ago during one of our MetroPlan meetings. Is this associated with that, or is this already on the docket? That would just be useful for me for context.
Yeah, Member Aslan, this is related to your request for the agenda item.
Oh, sweet. Cool. Glad to see that. I'm not the chair here, so I don't always see those dots connected immediately. This is such a great topic. I'm really excited to see how far along we are with a lot of these things. And just know that for my part, I'm wholly enthusiastic for getting involved and being able to take some credit for this and ponying up some funds or getting some, grant power going on our end for these things, even if there are jurisdictional concerns. I'm sorry, what's the speaker's name?
My name's Jeff Gagnon. I work with Arizona Game and Fish Department.
Cool. Yeah, really good presentation. One of the things, I have a degree in wildlife biology, a master's degree in conservation biology, and a deep background with this, and a lot of friends around town who are in the Forest Service and other agencies. One of my friends is a very, very big fan of Pete Buttigieg, and is constantly forwarding me things from the Secretary of Transportation's office about wildlife corridors. Can you parse apart how much of the funding you're talking about in these ongoing projects are related specifically to Department of Transportation efforts around wildlife corridors? Or Yeah, go ahead.
I
Open-ended
can,
question.
I can talk to that a little bit. So I'm going to back up one slide here. This is just one example. This program, the Wildlife Crossing Pilot Program, is one example of what's in the infrastructure, the current Infrastructure Act for wildlife. There are some other programs in there, like infra and raise, that can also address wildlife connectivity and wildlife vehicle collision mitigation. That's just within the Infrastructure Act itself. There are some other opportunities like through NIFWA for various other entities, but this is probably the premier one that will also allow for the habitat connectivity side of things and not just the safety side of things. If you get if you understand what I'm saying. So yeah, so does that answer your question, Austin?
Well, yeah, I just know there's various funding sources, and sometimes these things are packaged outwardly differently, but they're really the same thing.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep a pulse on that. Another specific question I have might be more relevant to our specific area. You spoke a lot about I-17 and I-40. I know there's a lot of elk encounters on South Lake Mary Road as well, between here and Lake Mary, or Mormon Lake and Payson. Just wondering how those efforts are going. And then finally, I have a question about wildlife safety. Do you guys anticipate or ever see any issues during hunting season where these corridors are being used by not poachers per se, but hunters who are just looking for an easy shot?
Yeah.
And what are you guys doing to protect those migration pathways?
So two things. The first one, I will address the Lake Mary Road question. I am aware of Lake Mary Road. I was actually raised in Flagstaff, so I'm aware of some of the areas that you're talking about there. And as far as I'm aware, there are a lot of accidents with wild deer and elk on that road, especially like you said, out towards Mormon Lake. And also on 87, as you get closer to Payson, that's another 87 and 260 is another one.
Yeah.
I haven't heard any plans that's not that Lake Mary Road is not a DOT road, and DOT I've been working a lot with on crossings, and I haven't seen much from the side of the county roads, and the Forest Service roads. So that's a Forest Service highway right there. And so I think it's just, again, if it's funding would probably help a lot of these, but then you've also got same issue you're talking about is on State Route 64 to the Grand Canyon, just north of Flagstaff 189. I mean, you start 260 east to Payson, further east to Payson. I mean, it's like the number of places where we're seeing the wildlife vehicle collisions is immense, and so we have to kind of focus our efforts. And right now, the interstates are some of our key locations. And then the next question was sorry, what was just real quick, remind me.
Just about hunting practices and how to prevent against bad players.
So when I showed you the pictures of the VCRs and me monitoring the structures, years ago, we've continued to work on that. And I saw some people try to use structures for hunting on camera, but a lot of those animals are using those at night. And so it didn't really pan out for at least the areas that I was working in. I have seen where they had to, like, for example, the Ponzagant deer migration from Utah to Flagstaff, or not to Flagstaff, Utah down to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. They did have to put some enforcement in place for that migration. But most of the crossings we have in general at dusk or after dark is when those animals are crossing, and hunters haven't really been able to have a lot of success with that because there's more animals out here than there's right here. And the same question would be with predators. I've actually seen, a lot of questions about, do predators key in on these, and what Banff Canada has seen in a lot of years of research, 30 or 40 years of research now, is they actually did a study on that, and they said they didn't really see any increased predation at the wildlife crossings. So I think we're good as far as those two.
Cool, Jeff, thank you. I'll just note, as wrapping up here for the board and the group, that obviously, focusing in on where the need is highest is definitely a good place to start. But it's very clear that the need for this sort of infrastructure and amenity is critical all over the place, and it's definitely something we should stay focused on. and where we can locally alleviate some of the burden of how to identify these places and target them for infrastructure, we should definitely be pursuing that as a metro planning organization for sure. And allow some of these other agencies to focus on the other areas where they also have jurisdiction. And it's very much low hanging fruit to talk about this from the perspective of public safety and driver safety for sure. But I think it's also just as important to keep in mind the critical element of genetic diversity that goes into this. We can't have healthy ecosystems without our wildlife being able to get from place to place. And it's critical not only to adapting landscapes, but just climate change goals, and everything that we do in terms of protecting our environment for a changing future. That very much includes genetic diversity and the future ability of species to reproduce and to maintain themselves into the future, and for ecosystems to maintain balance and react to changing climate as well. So thank you very much, Jeff. I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, Austin. Good comments. I agree that this is a really important issue that's kind of been ignored for years, but very pleased to see we're making progress. I'd also like to mention that in today's Arizona Daily Sun, on page 83, there's an article about this very issue. So check it out. The people in this room, I can let you share it. Any other comments or questions from the board? All right, I don't hear any. Jeff, I really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All right, thank you. All right, so we're back to general business, item A. And Dave Wessel is going to talk about the Coordinated Public Transit and Human Services Transportation Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are looking for action on this today. We're looking for the board to adopt this plan. By way of background, this plan is really directed towards service to the elderly and disabled, and directs funding for the 5310 program. Perhaps the most basic part of this plan are eligibility for grant applications, where participants in the program, typically nonprofits such as the Guidance Center, Zoni, Quality Connections, and public agencies like Mountain Line, have to list the projects that they intend to apply for and put those in the plan. And those types of projects can include capital, cutaway vans that are wheelchair equipped, and other vehicles like that to serve their populations. They can also include programs such as the taxi voucher and ADA plus programs that Mountain Line applies for and has received over the years to extend their reach into larger areas. And it can also include things supporting volunteer programs such as those provided through NAU. But the plan also includes strategies. This year's plan that we're asking you to adopt is a major update, which happens every 4 years, and includes strategies. I'll read a couple of them that are in your staff report. New strategy ensuring all transportation programs are accessible and usable by technologically limited populations. We know that elderly and disabled have challenges. Some have challenges accessing technology and making sure that we have a diversity of technology applications as well as solutions to those. A wide range of marketing materials to aid in the retention and frequency of information. Again, retention of information and being able to access these programs is key to meet their daily transportation needs. a simplification of paratransit qualification processes. This is a relatively small grant program in terms of the amount of funding that goes to any individual. But it's also a very complex both application and monitoring program. So anything we can do to help simplify that. And these are also relatively often poorly funded organizations with small staff that are not well equipped to handle such a complex process. So to continue to work on that. There are other new strategies listed in the staff report, as well as the full range of pre-applications there in the plan. So again, we're looking for the board to adopt this plan. It was supported by the Technical Advisory Committee and is going through the Mountain Line process as well, through their Transit Advisory Committee and their board. We work in close coordination, pardon the pun, with Mountain Line in the development of this program. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Does anyone have any questions? Well, just to simplify this, I'll move that we adopt the 2023 MetroPlan Mountain Line Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan Update. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Miranda Sweet, thank you. Any other questions or comments before we vote? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Aye, sir. Are there any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, the agenda says that stride forward is the next item. However, the Technical Advisory Committee has asked that we delay this at least a month. And I talked to city staff about it, and they have not had a chance to completely review it yet. And the public, at least at the point that they last met, the public review had not been completed. So the stride forward, we're going to delay for what, a month?
Probably to the advance of this. That's our next.
Do it
meeting.
at the advance.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kate. So the next one is Arizona legislative update and supporting various things and not supporting other things. I think, Kate, you were going to take the lead on this one, have a little discussion. Thank you.
I am. Thank you. Let me pull up my PowerPoint here real quick. Okay, great. You can see that. So a little bit of a legislative update. As you may recall, MetroPlan did engage a lobbyist this year. I think it was the first time we've done that at the state level, Karen Cruz. And so we've been working with her on a number of items coming through the state legislature right now. I've broken them into a couple different categories. The first category I will call transportation planning related bills. And there's 3 bills here that essentially all limit local jurisdictions' ability to do transportation planning that would consider bikes and pedestrians or reduce VMT. And they're phrased in a couple different ways. And obviously, Stride Forward talks about planning for pedestrians and bicycles, as well as reducing VMT, and then the city has its own plans regarding reducing VMT and the active transportation plan, et cetera. So they would impact the things going on at the local level. These are moving through pretty fast, changing on a daily basis right now. My understanding is that yesterday, 1313 and 1314 passed the full vote. So it would now be going on to the governor. We understand the governor does intend to veto the bills. However, our suggestion would be, we do have a letter attached in your
Subject,
packet.
reply, SB 1313 and 1314.
A little technical difficulty here. That's all right. Our letter in your packet is something we're recommending that the board would send over to our legislators. It does include 31312, which has not passed yet. It's still waiting a hearing. And then also potentially duplicating that letter for the governor to try to get her support to veto the bill, though we do believe she will veto all 3 bills when they are presented in front of her. The next one that I have is a funding bill. So this is also known as the RTAC bill, if you've been paying attention for that, and there are 4 projects in the MetroPlan region that are in this bill. There's the US 180 flood mitigation, the US 89 flood mitigation, the expansion of the JW Powell Bridge, and then additional funding for Lone Tree. So this bill just passed the Senate Transportation Committee this week with a 10-0 vote in favor, which is amazing for a funding bill like this. Yes. So we're very excited about that. But ultimately, what's going to happen is they don't actually expect this bill to move forward to a final vote. What they expect to happen is for now, all these projects to be vetted through the budget process and whether or not they will get included in that. So Karen's recommendation is that we actually start talking to the governor about the projects in our region and building support through the governor's office. And also continuing to get our local representatives to say or champion that this is something I need in order to vote yes on the budget. In that process, she has said it's unlikely 4 will make it. You're likely gonna get 1 or 2. Doesn't mean we shouldn't keep talking about all 4, but knowing your priorities would be an important thing to consider. Flood mitigation and some of our topics leading up to this meeting with our TAC and our management committee is really rising to the top, but still wanting to advocate for all the projects and see how much we can get and bring into the region. So that's the status of this. We are working with Karen on creating a day in collaboration with the county and the city to go down and talk to the governor's office together. MetroPlan would participate in that. And also then try to meet with our legislators while we are down there on these and carry them through to the finish line. We're impressed with how far we've gotten and hope we can get a couple across. The final one that I'll mention is the Arizona Smart Fund. So this was a part of the 23 budget at the state last year. And this was basically what replaced the RTAC funding bill last year. Was they said, well, we'll put some money out there for people to be able to leverage the federal infrastructure money, and because state money is considered local match. So we would like to see this fund continue. The city has an application in for Smart Fund money right now that will be heard by the State Transportation Board later this month out in Winslow. And then we are working with the county on a potential application for them as well. So definitely a great way to offset local costs when seeking these federal funds. So our next steps are to respond with a letter about the planning bills, continue to educate about the need for all 4 funding projects, but consider, really trying to get the champion for the top projects out there. And then also ask for the Smart Fund to be continued. So that is my legislative update, and we are looking for the board to support that letter. So it'd be good to give us feedback on that. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Kate. A couple comments before I open it up to the rest of the board. These letters should go to both the LD6 and LD7 legislators because parts of the city are in those 2 districts, and of course, obviously to the governor. And as far as the funding, I talked to city staff and they are reporting that the city manager is, well, let me just start it this way. Highway 89 is the highest priority for the county. And for the city, probably Highway 180. So those 2 are at the top of the list, regardless of which order you want to put them in. Hopefully we're going to get at least 2 of them, get both of them. The city considers the Lone Tree funding to be higher priority than the John Wesley Powell Bridge because we're short some money. The project is farther along. That said, the John Wesley Powell Bridge is very important also, especially to the new hospital. So anyway, I am supportive of the letters, and I read them, of course. They all look about the same. No, just- So let me open it up to board members. Any comments on the letters or any of the things that Kate just talked about regarding what's going on in the legislature?
If
Kate,
I,
why
if I
don't you go
may,
first?
real
Yeah.
quick, we did actually agendize it as an action item, so. we're- okay.
Yeah. We'll get to that. But let's have discussion first. So anyway, any discussion, pro, con, questions?
Chairman McCarthy, this is
Yes.
Director Williams. I do have I'm supportive of these letters, but I want to emphasize it might be worth having another fresh review of the letters to make sure that there isn't any glaring errors. And the reason I bring that up is that right after Senate Bill 1314, the letter continues on, and it says these bills interrupt and interfere with one of deepest values of planning integrity that guide our work. It seems to me that there's maybe a word missing out there. Interfere with one of our deepest values.
Okay.
That was the only thing that really stood out, but it might be helpful to have a fresh set of eyes look it over one last time before you sign your name on to it, Chair McCarthy.
And before I sign it, I'll definitely double check those little details, which are important. And then Kate, maybe you can review it for anything because of the changing situation at the legislature. And I don't know if you can get those to me this afternoon or.
We'll work with Karen. Karen helped us draft them, so we
Okay.
will work with Karen to look for edits that are substantive related to the status of the bills and then any typos and get you some new copies as soon as we can, but we'll take the first stab at updating them. So you don't have to.
But substantially, with those minor changes, I think they're good bills. Any other comment? Thank you, Tony. All right, so I guess what we really need here is a motion to approve the intent of the letters with minor corrections. And then you don't really need anything beyond that, like on the funding bills or anything.
No, at this point, we're just moving forward unless somebody tells us they don't want to with the actions that we've suggested to you. I will note there would be one additional letter to the governor that was not in your packet. That's based on where the bills have moved. That's now a new recommendation of Karen, but it would essentially be the same letter.
So it's the same spirit, just it's updating based on what's happening on a daily basis down there, hourly basis. All right, so could I get a motion to approve with minor changes the letters that are in the packet as we just talked about?
Chair McCarthy, so moved.
Well, thank you, Mr. Williams. Get a second?
I'll second.
Miranda Sweet seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? No, so that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. All right, we're down to item D. And Kate is going to talk to us about the 2022 audit. And maybe kind of like as you and I talked about what we foresee for the 2023 audit.
Yes.
So thank you, Kate. Go ahead.
That sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we did complete our audit on time on March 31st and got that submitted. We had no findings, and the essential outcome of the audit is that everything was done in good spirit. Things were done according to government rules. Funds were spent in the way that they were intended to be spent. Not as findings of the audit. I think I have, so non-material findings or non-material feedback from the auditor is that we do have some things to work on. So while it was a clean audit, They found several instances of more clerical or procedural items that need to be worked on. So I have a couple examples on the screen in front of you. There were some payroll errors that were corrected in partnership with Mountain Line. We didn't document the public opening of an RFP, which is a requirement. We had a couple instances of payments without the appropriate backup documentation for those payments. And then we didn't have everybody who needed to sign the conflict of interest policy sign the conflict of interest policy. So more of those procedural type items. And ultimately the auditor is recommending we need to update and create some better internal controls, which would help avoid some of these occurrences. Dave and I are going to meet with the auditor next week, I believe, to get a better debrief and really look deep dive into the existing internal controls and then what needs to change. So we are actively working on changing procedures already, though it will take time to catch up. And what I wanted to note is that we are 9 months in, maybe 10 months in to the FY23 fiscal year. And so I think that we will see similar findings out of the next fiscal year's audit, because we are just getting this feedback now and starting to implement changes. Additionally, unfortunately, our business manager was responsible for many of the internal controls. And so not having that position filled, I don't think we're going to see that this got better in our next audit. But in FY24, hope to bring you a perfectly clean audit after we have time to implement everything. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, I know you've actually started working on this pretty actively. Yeah, I appreciate that. Any other questions for the board members? So that's for discussion only, so we can move on. We already did item E, wildlife corridors. Kate, item F is some various things. I think actually Dave's going to take the first one, Route 66 corridor master plan. Dave, did you have some comments about that?
Yes, the only comment I have on that is that Mandia is going to take this, Mr. Chair.
Happy to do that.
So delegation is,
Yeah.
It's one of my strong suits.
yeah. It's so-called sidestepping, right? No. All right, what about SS 4A?
Mandy can speak to West Route 66.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, no
Mandy,
worries,
go ahead.
it's no problem. All right, so the West Route 66 corridor master plan, this item has been identified on our work plan for the last year, or maybe a little bit longer. But we are very excited to finally get this project started. As a corridor master plan, this process is going to respond to that future development and growth along West Route 66. This plan will identify, evaluate, and plan for those future scenarios and look at ways to reduce congestion and provide mobility options that meet our current policies. And we started off this project by drafting a scope of work to help guide our conversations around the process, deliverables, and expectations from our partners. And a draft of that scope is in your packet if you would like to take a peek at it. That scope was also provided to the TAC at their last meeting for initial feedback and to help us set up those future conversations. We plan on hosting several stakeholder interviews next month. These interviews will help us define the project boundaries as shown in this map, gain knowledge and insight on the history of planning and projects along the corridor, and determine what types of technical assistance is required in order to budget time and funding wisely. I am assigned the project manager, and we are planning on doing as much of this planning process in-house as possible. However, we do know that there will be limitations on analysis and modeling where we may seek consultants for technical assistance in the future. So more project information is to come after we complete those stakeholder interviews and solidify that scope and boundaries and schedules. And that's the end of my update. Are there any questions?
I'll ask a question. Are bicycle and ped an important part of this planning process?
Of course.
Okay, I figured
Definitely.
so. I mean, as I look at the map, I mean, that's a wonderful route for bicycles. So I'm glad to hear that. Any other questions from the board? No, let's move on to Dave. I think you're gonna do the next item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to cover the next two together. The Regional Transportation Safety Plan and the SS4A Safe Streets and Roads for All Safety Action Plan. The Transportation Safety Plan is underway. We're doing this in coordination with NACOG and CYMPO, working with Greenlight Engineering. The first round of outreach is fairly well complete for us, where we had over 500 people participate in an online survey, answering questions about their perceptions of safety and areas of safety concern. We're also online with a it's called interactive map called Social Pinpoint, and hundreds of comments there as well. Again, more specifically locating pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular safety issues and allowing people to comment. Greenlight's going to take the information and compare it to the data that they've been collecting. Much of that is also available online, both in tables showing the last 5 years of crash history, as well as another interactive map where people can look at crash histories around northern Arizona, and specifically zoom in on the MetroPlan area. The outcome of that project, which will conclude in December, will be really twofold. One, it will be an action plan for the region that meets the Safe Streets and Roads for All requirements. Will also meet highway safety improvement program requirements for the state. The latter is tied to a benefit cost analysis, and until our evaluations are complete, we really won't know if there are projects that are eligible and meet that minimum threshold. But it will identify areas or focus areas of safety concern, as well as a number of strategies and projects to address those. The Safe Streets and for All, or SS4A grant, has been received. Mandia met with Federal Highways Arizona Division last week, and fairly cursory. Yep, you guys have a scope, looks okay. We'll talk more. So the grant agreement is underway. This scope really focuses on vulnerable users who were just asking about, bicyclists on Route 66. So this will really focus on safety projects and strategies associated with bicyclists and pedestrians, and dig a little deeper into that. We are coordinating with the city. The city is very interested in the SS4A program. And, you know, they're at the close of, I guess, the last council, I believe there was a discussion spearheaded by former council member Shimoni on a Vision Zero approach. And I know city staff is looking at that seriously. Vision Zero meaning driving traffic fatalities and injuries to zero. That's really the only acceptable number in that realm. And so city staff is interested in pursuing that. And we're very interested in sharing with them and coordinating with them what we're working on through these two programs. I guess the last thing I'll say is there is a notice of funding opportunity out now for the next round of SS4A funding. It came very quick. We were expecting it to be on kind of the same cycle as the last one, which would have given us opportunity to perhaps submit for an infrastructure or implementation grant. We'll explore ways to see if there's an opportunity for MetroPlan or one of our member agencies to qualify. But you need to have a safety action plan that meets the criteria. And we felt that we really fell short on a couple of key points. But with the adoption of the active transportation master plan, we might squeak by. And we'll explore that with the city to see if we can qualify. So happy to answer any questions on these two projects.
Any questions? Not hearing any. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, you're going to talk about membership in NACTO. Is that how you say it?
Yes, perfect. And apologies for
Tell us
not
what it is.
writing out what NACTO is. NACTO is the National Association of City Transportation Officials. And they have a more, shall I say, climate action, vulnerable user action forward agenda than some of the existing federal highway guidance that's out there. And so they actively work towards changing federal code that would have an impact on the city. For example, if FHWA were to change its standards for pedestrians and crossings, that would automatically flow down into city code because city code references the things that FHWA is doing. So this was a request from a TAC member to consider if MetroPlan could potentially join on behalf of all the regional agencies and get those additional resources from NACTO, participate in their legislative agenda. It is not an inexpensive membership.
$75.
$7,500. $7,500 a year. For reference, our current membership budget is about $1,500 a year, so it would be a pretty significant increase. But potentially high reward. Though I do think that it is the city that is potentially the biggest beneficiary of the membership with NACTO. We did at management committee talk about it, and there was interest from the management team that if we can figure out how to include it in the budget, that people would be very supportive of us doing that. More recently, MetroPlan in partnership with Mountain Line was just awarded a new 5305E transit planning grant. These are the funds that typically Mountain Line applies for and then delivers the projects. However, MetroPlan has to be the applicant, so there's a little partnership on how those funds are flowing. We just found out this week that they were awarded a $200,000 transit into code update is what they called it. So it's taking city code, county code, and applying some of the things Mountain Line would like to see in the codes. And so support for a consultant or assistance to make recommendations for how to change the codes. And related to that, Heather mentioned, well, maybe NACTO membership can be paid for out of that grant. So there could be an opportunity there to partner with Mountain Line on the NACTO membership piece. So we just wanted to get a sense, it's obviously a big increase in the budget. Let's see if there was any sense from the board on, direction with this. And if not, I can definitely look at it in the budget process and see if we can afford it and keep trying to collaborate with Mountain Line to see if there's the opportunity to use grants to pay for it.
I did talk to the city engineer and to the city transportation engineer, and they were very supportive, except that they didn't think they could come up with that much money. $75, $7,500. So I don't know, are we gonna put this? We'll see if any comments from the board about, is this a good idea, etc.
Yeah, Chair
No.
McCarthy.
Yeah, Tony, please.
Yes, Heather and I spoke or communicated in the last week prior to today's meeting, and I do want to let the other board members know that Mountain Line supports joining and would be happy to chip in, as this group has many of the transit policies and codes that the Mountain Line wants to see happen in Flagstaff. And so just echo what Kate mentioned earlier, that Mountain Line is on board of supporting this in some way, shape, or form to help make the membership possible.
Okay, so are we envisioning maybe a shared expense?
That's what we're still trying to get a affirmative from NACTO that they would allow how that would work or that they would allow it, but it sure seems like we could at least get the resources out to the partner agencies. But yeah, instead of everybody joining on their own, one membership that could be used by all.
Can I ask who on TAC was pushing for this, or
I believe it was Ann, Member Dunno from Mountain Line.
for Mountain Line? Okay.
Mhm.
Any other comments on this item? All right, so are we gonna kind of keep this on the stove, but on the back burner? Is
Yep,
that
as I'm hearing general support for it if we can afford it. So as
if
we
they can
look at the
figure out
budget,
Financial, yeah.
yep, we'll see.
It
if we
is,
can
it is
find-
quite a bit of money, but. And so maybe when you come back to us, explain where the money might come from, and maybe a little more detail on the advantages to the city, the county, to the bus line, et cetera.
Great.
Okay? Austin, please.
Yeah, my question, and maybe you went over this and I missed it, I apologize. How does representation on that organization work?
So as they do have a legislative committee and a legislative agenda that you would get to be a part of. They also develop documents that you would get to be part of. The other piece, I think the big benefit is oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I guess what I was focusing in on is someone gonna have to be selected to represent us at monthly meetings, et cetera? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think MetroPlan would be interested in being involved on their legislative committee. I don't think they have a minimum requirement, more of opportunities for members
Okay.
to join. I think the big benefit, or one of the biggest benefits, is they will come workshop particular issues with the communities that join. So for example, to bring up something I know the council has talked about, the Cheshire traffic calming, where that road is very wide. That is potentially something that you could ask NACDO to come out and help figure out design solutions for. So they do
All
those.
right, yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure that I feel personally kind of at capacity with the number of committees and subcommittees and ad hoc groups and various things I'm involved in. If there's an expectation that one of us is traveling down to Phoenix for meetings or for being involved in this in a specific way, I just wanted to account for that and make sure there's a conversation around it. But it seems more like we take advantage of those opportunities as they seem appropriate.
Yeah, more staff resources, I think. I don't think there would be any ask of board members.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, Kate, I think we're moving down to item G, happenings.
Okay, so happenings at MetroPlan, I put a brief update of things that have been going on at MetroPlan in your report. This is a attempt to do a better job explaining what MetroPlan does and the things that we are doing. I'm sorry, I'm trying to bring up a PowerPoint right now, so if I can grab it. So just a better way to disseminate who we are and what we do. And so there are a couple more items in your staff report, but I put a couple up here just for people to know. The idea being our mission is to leverage cooperation. And if people don't know the things we're doing, it's hard to leverage cooperation around them. So trying to get that information out, as well as celebrate things like Dave on April 1st celebrated 26 years with the MPO. So appreciate everything Dave's done and the projects that this community has seen, thanks to his efforts, the foots, the intersection over here at 66.
That's not Dave Wessel's picture. So who is that Dave?
This is the only picture Dave has allowed us to have at this point. So.
Time for an update.
Well, you can tell this is an evolving organization. He starts with a goatee and ends up with a beard.
Either that or we're stuck in time.
It's the picture's meant to represent the longevity of his career. We are trying to do a better job building our social media following. So we've put the links to our Instagram and Facebook here and trying to get out regular updates to people through those mediums. We talked real briefly, we've been assisting the city with their downtown mile Arizona Smart Fund application, helping them draft the application and providing support and trying to reach out to state transportation board members. We intend to go speak at the state transportation board in Winslow later this month, where the application will be heard. The application's for $6 million, so it's not for nothing. And it would be great to get as much of that smart fund money as possible out of it. The total pot that the city's eligible for is 10 million. So it's a pretty significant piece of the pie, but we'll see how much we can get. And then a couple things to mark your calendars on. I guess one of these is old, that Dave hosted a VMT workshop in partnership with the city. We will have a table at Earth Day. If there's anything people would like us to share, we're happy to do that. Bike Month is in May. That is hosted by Flagstaff Bike Organization. We're trying to partner with them on some events and provide assistance for that. And then finally, the advance is May 24th. And so there will be no May 4th board meeting. We will be updating calendar invites here shortly. No May 4th meeting in lieu of the advance, and then we're going to turn around very quickly and have a June 1 board meeting. That is our end of fiscal year meeting, and so we need to adopt the budget at that June 1 meeting. So we'll be back to back there pretty fast, but we'll work hard that week to take everything out of the advance and make sure it showed up in the budget. The calendar invites are going to be updated here shortly. We've been trying to access some of Rosie's IT information and we're finally in. And so we didn't want to update before this meeting so that we confused Zoom links, but watch for a cancellation. Then you should remove anything you have from Rosie on your calendar and we will send fresh invites. Additionally, unless someone says they're opposed at this meeting, we would like to move them over to Teams and drop our Zoom membership. That's an additional cost to the organization that at this point may not be necessary. Oh, great. So moving to Teams and new invites coming.
Invitations.
Yes, invitations, meeting invitations.
I'm an old guy. Okay, is that it for that item?
Yes.
All right, future agenda items, it says Kate Morley.
Yes, this is just a call for any agenda items board members would like us to have. We have a list, but similar to the wildlife corridors today.
Any comments? All right, I don't hear any. So the agenda says we're going to go into e-session here. But I'm going to toss out the idea of maybe we could do closing business first. And that way staff wouldn't have to come back for after the e-session. So why don't we do closing business, except for adjourn, obviously. And then we'll do the breakout for the e-session on personnel matters. And then we'll come back, Mandia, I think you'd come back to help us officially close out the meeting, but the rest of you probably wouldn't have to come back. Does that sound good?
Yep, that sounds
All right,
great.
so let's move on to items to and from the board. Let me just go around. I don't really have anything. Austin Aslan, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay. Tony Williams.
I do not, thank you.
All right, thank you. Miranda Sweet.
Nothing for me today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Miranda. We already talked about the strategic advances May 24th, so enough said on that. All right, so could I get a motion that we go into executive session and then Mandia will do a breakout session? So stay tuned, stay on your, don't walk away from your computer. Did someone make a motion to go into e-session?
I move that we go into e-session.
Well, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Tony, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, so Mandia, you're going to do a breakout session.
Correct.
Give me just a second.
Yeah, take your time.
All right, you should be good.
All right, so I'm in breakout session. So maybe before you move, just make sure. I'm gonna put something up on the screen here, so I should open this and then go share screen.
Correct.
And then hit this. Is that all I have to do? Oh, share.
Sure.
Sure. Okay. All right, I think we're set.
You good? Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, so as you already know, discussions made during executive session are confidential by law. And all present in e-session or who receive e-session information or materials shall keep the discussions, information, and materials confidential and shall not disclose them except allowed by law. So, do you guys see an Excel spreadsheet on the screen here? Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? No? I'll be right back. Thanks. Trying to do a breakout session. And it's not working.
May not go to work after we thought we could read set up or something.
Amanda, try to set this up, feel free. They can't hear me.
That's more right.
So try to get Mandy in here again.
Let's see what the tools are. There's no tools.
It's weird. I tried to do a screen save. Should we get out of screen save? Why don't we do stop share? Maybe that'll do it.
It was just on top is all, so.
There's my speaker off, my mic. Start video, what's that?
The buttons aren't there.
What should we do?
We won't be able to do a breakout because there's no breakout button to.
Should I get Mandy to come back in?
Yeah, but there's nothing you can do because it doesn't get set up correctly because.
We tried it before the meeting, it worked fine, actually. Why don't I go get her?
Yeah, go grab her because it's not showing the breakout session window.
Oh. You know what, I think it's because we turned off your computer sound, so it wouldn't interfere with the owl.
I don't see the buttons there for doing the breakout. That's what I'm not seeing.
So it's gonna be on me over
Yeah,
here,
that's
so.
what I'm thinking, because you're not a host or a co-host, so
Yeah,
it's probably
so-
over here. But yeah, so there it is. It's all
Yes.
ready to go.
Yes.
Be so nice if people would show up in person.
Well, it looks like they're already in the breakout room. Austin, McCarthy, Miranda and Tony are already in there.
Correct. So let's
So
see.
if they're already in the breakout room, it's all ready to go.
Let's try this.
And then when they're done, all you need to do is close the room. So it looks like it's good.
So can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, it looks like it's all set up properly.
So we're just.
That's what was throwing me over here, because I was like, I don't see the
So what,
breakout.
it's, they still don't, I don't see anybody or anything.
Jim, is he in the breakout?
Yes. Yeah. The other option, Jim, is I can just stop recording since there's no public
Yeah.
in here. And then
Okay,
you guys can just go back to the main room.
okay.
That's
At least
weird.
for now.
It's set
So
up
why don't you do
correctly.
that?
And
Yeah,
everything looks
okay.
fine.
So stop recording.
Okay.
Well, thank you. We have adjourned the E-session and we made some decisions and none of that needs to be made public at this point. We'll coordinate with human resources, et cetera. So if there's no final comments, I will adjourn the meeting. Any final comments? What's that? Okay. All right, so I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Good day.
See you in a few minutes, Miranda.
All right.